Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in. As you may know, we offer NCR Veteran Ranger gear, and in this video we're going to go over how to assemble the premium backpack kit. We do also offer finished versions of the backpack in case you didn't want to go through all this yourself. So first, let's take a look at what you get with the kit. You're going to get a preformed and sanded backpack brace, so that's ready to paint. You're going to get the raw casting for the tanks with pre-drilled holes at the top. The large hose adapter, plastic vial, 2 plastic nuts, 2 medium hose adapters, 2 medium ribbed hoses, a small rubber hose, a large ribbed hose, section of heat shrink tubing, a small hose adapter, 6 screws, 5 nylon straps, and 3 vinyl straps. Okay, this step 1 is completely optional. If you want to clean up the backpack a little bit, or if you want to use the plastic vial as a liquid level indicator, then you can participate in this step, but it's not necessary to build the kit. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking a cutoff wheel and I'm going around the inside on the back and cutting off the excess flashing just to make the back look a little bit nicer. You have to be a little careful when you're trimming towards the top of the backpack right here. If you're not careful, you could actually cut through the top side. You see I'm having to cut at an angle here around the ridges so that I don't actually cut through the top of the backpack. And I'm just going to use the cutting wheel to clean up some of the excess resin that was built up around those ridges. Alright, and the next step will be to cut out the slot for the liquid level indicator, the plastic vial. So as I mentioned before, you could do one or the other, or you don't have to do either one of these steps. But if you want to use the liquid level indicator, then just take your cutting wheel, cut along the sides of the slot, and then you're going to cut to remove the center section. And this is what it'll look like after you get done. And then you can either use a small sanding burr, or if you're pretty good with the cutting wheel, you can use that as well. That's what I'm doing here, just cleaning up the top and the bottom of the slot. Alright, next you want to use a sanding drum that's about the same diameter as the plastic vial. That'll give you the best results, and you're going to sand and remove some material above and below the slot first. You want to be careful that you don't sand too much of the material away, because you don't want to go through the casting. You don't want to make the casting too thin, otherwise it'll distort. Alright, what I'm doing here is I'm coming up from underneath so that I can see the side profile of the slot. That'll enable me to create a nice flat even surface for the vial to sit up against. And then this is the sanding burr I was telling you about before. You can use this to clean up the sides of the slot and around the top and the bottom if your cutting wasn't exactly perfect. And now we're going to test fit the plastic vial to make sure that it fits in there nice and flat and doesn't leave any gaps. You know, if you have some small gaps, it's not a really big deal. If you have any large gaps, then you probably have some uneven surfaces on the back side, and so you can go back with the sanding drum and even those out a little bit more. Alright, in step 2 we're going to drill all of the holes on the tank, casting, and the vinyl straps. So the laser cut brace already has the holes for those screws on the back side. What you'll do is you'll put the tanks and the brace together and make sure everything is centered, and then you can trace the holes like I am doing here, or you can just drill directly through the backpack brace into the casting. And next we're going to go ahead and take a 1/4 inch drill bit, and we're going to drill out the hole for the small hose adapter on the front of the casting. And then we're going to use a 9/64 inch drill bit, and we're going to drill the holes on the back side of the casting. And I like to angle the holes a little bit towards the center of the backpack, and that just seems to help the screws go in a little easier. And for the vinyl straps, you're going to use a 3/16 or 13/64 inch drill bit. It doesn't really matter, either one of those will do. You just want the holes to be a little bit bigger so that the screws will go in more easily. And for the smaller strap, you want to make the hole about a 1/2 inch away from the side. For the medium and large strap, you want to make the hole about 3/4 inch away from the side. Okay, for step 3, we're going to use a little sandpaper to clean up the flashing on some of the smaller pieces that need to be painted. Anytime you have a casting like this, some of the plastic seeps through around the seams of the mold, and so you got to just clean that up. It doesn't take much effort. I'm using a 220 grit sandpaper and just going over all of the seams, removing the flashing and making it a little bit more even of a surface. For the medium-sized hose adapters, you want to clean up the top side, and then on the back side where the threads are, you want to make sure you get all the little globs of resin off of the back side so that the plastic nuts will thread on more easily later on down the road. And I've made all of these pieces hollow, so if you want, you can run wires through them or whatever you need to do there. After that, you're going to go ahead and prime all of the pieces that need to be painted and then paint them, and now we can assemble the backpack. So you're going to take the longest nylon strap and you're going to put it through the backpack brace as I'm showing here. Yeah, otherwise you won't be able to do that later. So go ahead and do it now. And take the medium-sized hose adapters, and you're going to put the medium-sized ribbed hoses in with a twisting action, so twist and push. And there are little ribs on the inside of the hose adapters that'll snap into place. And then you're going to take the large hose adapter and you're going to put that on at about in between 10 to 11 o'clock position. Then you're going to twist it a quarter turn to the 12 o'clock position. Alright, next we take the plastic vial, and about a quarter drop of food dye is enough. So just get a little bit on the top of the vial. And you know, add a little bit of water, fill it up about 2/3 of the way, and put the cap on it. And now we're going to glue it in place. So position the vial. You can take a look at the front side to make sure you get the position correct. And now we're going to use some hot glue to put it in place. I use high temperature hot glue anytime I'm working with these props because I don't want the hot glue to be melting away, you know, if you're out cosplaying or something like that. So this stuff melts at 350 degrees. So you want to put some of the hot glue on the top and on the bottom of the vial. Let it dry, and then we're good to go there. Alright, next go ahead and put the tank casting into the backpack brace and get that all centered up again. And take the small vinyl strap and your screws. And go ahead and slide the vinyl strap through on one side and put the screw in to secure it in place. And it's a good idea to make sure that all of the holes are lined up properly. Alright, and you can use a heat gun or hair dryer to make the vinyl straps more flexible. This step is not necessary, but I find it a little bit easier because once the vinyl strap is more flexible, it can also stretch. So if your holes are a little bit off, then this just makes it a little bit easier to assemble it and also to curve around the shape of the backpack. And you want to give the paint plenty of time to dry, especially on the vinyl straps. Otherwise, you know, it's a little sticky. Alright, now that we've got the small one in place, we're going to get the medium vinyl strap, and we're going to do the same thing with the medium vinyl strap. So just secure it with one screw on one side and apply some heat. I've got it set at like a medium temperature, so on my heat gun it's actually measures the temperature in Fahrenheit, so it's about 600 degrees Fahrenheit. And just secure the other end with the screw, and now we go on to the large vinyl strap. And just repeat the same process with the large vinyl strap. And those screws are designed to also tap into the plastic because there aren't any pre-existing threads in those holes, so that won't be a problem. Now I'm just going to take the medium-sized hose adapters, insert them into the pre-drilled holes on the casting, and we're going to take the plastic nuts and you're going to go ahead and thread those on the inside. Now, if you don't want to use the plastic nuts, you don't have to. You could also use hot glue on the inside to secure those medium hose adapters. But since the inside surface of the casting is not sanded at all right there, the hot glue will have a harder time sticking there. So that's why we're doing the nuts. But it can be a little tricky to get those on because of their location. You want to be careful not to cross thread the hose adapters at all, because if you do cross thread the hose adapters, it can be even that much more difficult to get those plastic nuts in place. Alright, now we're going to take the small hose adapter and some super glue and go ahead and put the small rubber hose in through the front side, pull it out through the back side of the hose adapter, and then apply some super glue to the sides of the hose. It doesn't take a lot, just very thin. And I find if you pull the hose back through with the twisting action, it'll help the hose go all the way in without sticking. And then you can just wipe the excess super glue off on the back side of the hose. Now insert the small hose adapter into the hole we drilled earlier, and then go ahead and take your large ribbed hose and put that into the large hose adapter. And I like to use a little bit of heat to shape the large ribbed hose. So this is going to be like a lower temperature between around 400 to 500 degrees. And then what you see I'm doing is I'm flexing the hose back and forth to make sure that it didn't get too hot. If the hose gets too hot, then the ribs will actually melt together and stick to each other. So you want to be careful to avoid that. So I flex the hose back and forth just to make sure that it's not sticking, and then I hold it in place, and I just kind of create like a little S curve in the hose. And then we're going to take the heat shrink tubing, we're going to put the small rubber hose in, pull it through, and then we're just going to push the heat shrink tubing back down onto the large ribbed hose. And you're going to have to do that with like a little bit of a wiggling action because it is pretty tight. You can also stretch the heat shrink tubing out a little bit more if you've got strong fingers. It doesn't have to go all the way on. And then you're just going to take some heat and apply that to the heat shrink tubing, and that'll secure the hoses together. Now we're going to put the straps on. So take the other 4 nylon straps, those are all the same size, and feed them through the slots from the back side. Now these are going to be loose, as you see here. Once you secure it to the jacket, it won't be a problem. But if you want to just ensure that they don't slide out, you can apply a little bit of hot glue to the underside of the ledge and hold that in place for a little while. And now you won't have to worry about your straps sliding out. It doesn't take much hot glue. You don't want to use a lot. If you use too much, it'll ooze out all over the backpack and make a big mess. Okay, for step 6, we're going to take care of the decals. If you opted for the transfer decals, I'm going to show you how to apply those. Otherwise, you can paint these locations. So the first step is to separate all the individual decals. Now you're going to take some Sulky K2000 adhesive spray, put a little bit on some cardboard so you can then transfer the decals with the black side facing up, and just give them a little tap. That will hold them in place while you spray the adhesive onto the back side of the transfer decals. Now you could take some rubbing alcohol and go over the areas where we're applying the decals. I didn't show that step. And you just hold the decals over the area and then lay it down. For the recessed areas here on the backpack, it's a little bit more difficult to get the decal in, especially on this rectangle. But you can use the end of your X-Acto knife to kind of push the decal down on the corners. On the backpack brace, these areas are not quite as recessed, so it's a little easier. But you just position the decal over the engraved spot and press down, remove the transfer sheet, and then give it another quick press. And I've got another video that goes into a bit more detail about applying the transfer decals, and that one's geared towards the helmet. But if you want to learn more about it, you can watch that video. Now your backpack is assembled. After this step, I like to apply a black wash. That'll give the backpack a bit more of a grungy appearance. And so that's what it looks like after the black wash. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy your backpack kit.